Our next part here will be I'd like to make you familiar with Dr. Stone's background, where he came from. Where did he get these ideas, this polarity therapy? What are these concepts? So, Dr. Stone, Randolph Stone, born in 1890, became a chiropractor and osteopath in his mid and late 20s, and learned the healthcare approaches, especially of osteopathy. But meanwhile, at the same time, he was deeply, deeply interested in the wisdom traditions from around the world. He learned the English language by translating the Bible. He was studying to be a Lutheran minister. In the 1920s, he became very curious about the traditions of India and later the Orient as well. So I'd just like to take a few minutes here and see some pictures of some of the sources that are mentioned relating to where Dr. Stone got his material. We begin with his esoteric interests, and we might start with the Theosophical Society. He was the librarian of the Theosophical Society, which was attempting to bring the ideas of India into the Western context. And we see Madame Blavatsky and Rudolf Steiner and Manly Hall are very early major authors and influences in bringing those traditions into a Western framework. At the same time, he was very active. He attended lectures and joined organizations. And some of the organizations that we know that he participated in were the Sufi groups. He was in Chicago at the time. And the Sufi organization, that's a kind of a hybrid between India and Persia, mysticism, very well known in that era. He was deeply interested in that. Also the Freemasons and the sort of mystical traditions embodied in Freemasonry, and the Rosicrucians were all organizations that he was an active member of. And he began to get the idea that these more philosophical or esoteric ideas had a great relevance in healthcare because they addressed the underlying conditions, the underlying idea of who are we and why are we here. And then we could progress it a little bit further and just acknowledge that he was also very enthusiastic about yoga, about meditation, about the yogic traditions from India, and he said, if a yogi comes to Chicago, I'll be in the front row. And we see here images of some of the people that he is known to have had contact with them or their teachings. These are the first, really. It's the first wave of the philosophy of India when it arrived in the U.S. And some comments about each one. Of particular interest in the bottom right, the yogic tradition of northern India seems to be a source for some of the more esoteric materials in polarity therapy. On the bottom left is an author from Buddhism, and clearly he had a deep curiosity about how the Buddhist principles, nonviolence in particular, how these had some relevance for healthcare. The idea of lifestyle adjustments that could be made, and polarity therapy became a nice hybrid between the healthcare world and the inner world of meditation and contemplation, self-awareness, and self-realization. And then finally, we could observe that he also had some very significant influences from the medical field. And in his books, we find references to Edwin Babbitt, who was a clairvoyant medical doctor in the late 1800s, who developed the idea he could actually see with his clairvoyant capacities. He could see the aura surrounding the body, and he could detect the various patterns and flows. And clearly Dr. Stone was very familiar with that material. He quoted it in his books and has some of those illustrations. Also of great interest is Andrew Taylor Still, the founder of osteopathy. Dr. Stone participated, he took his osteopathic training when the osteopathic field was still in its infancy. It was about 25 years old at the time he attended osteopathic college. And Andrew Taylor Still was really quite a remarkable medical doctor, had a very close interest in shamanism of the American Indians, particularly the Shawnee tribe. He studied the Shawnee indigenous approach to health, and he learned the Shawnee language. And Andrew Taylor Still was in the tradition of manual medicine before the era of drugs and surgery, and he had the insight in the 1870s, 1880s, he had the insight that most of healthcare was organized around the pathology, the diseases of the clients. And he began to get very good results by bringing in, first and foremost, a recognition of the health. It's a paradigm shifting concept to focus on the health rather than the disease, and build up the health, and then also take care of suppressing the disease. But it was really a great innovation credited to Andrew Taylor Still. And then on the bottom right, we could see a few other mentioned resources, medical resources that clearly Dr. Stone was closely affiliated with. Robert Fulford and Major Desjardins in chiropractic, and Fulford in osteopathy were both innovators in their own right. Fulford later became famous as the subject of a chapter in the book Spontaneous Healing by Andrew Weil. And it's a wonderful read. If you read that second chapter of the book, Spontaneous Healing, you'll really get a window into the old-timers, the old-time manual medicine approach to healthcare. So Dr. Stone was really combining modern science as it was emerging with these major influences of esotericism, mysticism, meditation, vegetarianism, lifestyle regulation, and so on, particularly a whole idea of self-awareness being applied to healthcare. And that's where Polarity Therapy came from, really a remarkable, comprehensive, full-spectrum approach to healthcare.